Hey there, welcome to episode 140 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today are some of my reaction figures. Now, if you're not familiar with reaction figures, they are produced by SUPER7. They are little 3 3/4 inch figures with 5 points of articulation. So basically meaning their arms move like that, their legs also move like that, and their head just turns side to side. It's very simple. They're modeled after the old figures of like the 70s and early 80s, most famously Kenner's original Star Wars figures. So that's, if you've had the Star Wars figures back in the 80s, then you know what to expect from a SUPER7 reaction figure. They're kind of meant as a nostalgic property. So, there's definitely figures out there with better sculpting, better articulation, better paint apps. But these are kind of meant to be fun and simple and a throwback to your childhood. And I really like these things. I've been on board with them since the earliest days. It was actually Funko, the company that makes Funko Pops, that started the reaction figure line. The first figure produced was one of the Xenomorphs from Alien. And I'm not sure how long Funko kept the property going. They started doing all kinds of different little properties, such as the Universal Monsters and other things. But eventually, SUPER7 took over the line of reaction figures. I don't know if Funko is associated in any way or SUPER7 completely took it over. But either way, there was no real change in the way the figures were produced. They still come on these really nice vintage cards that are very reminiscent of the 80s figures. And they've produced countless numbers of reaction figures because they're from like so many different properties. It's hard to keep track of. It's kind of like Funko Pops. If you tried to make a checklist of every Funko Pop, it's crazy because they do TV, they do movies, they do cartoons, they do music, they do, they've done the Queen. Like, they just do everything under the sun. Reaction figures not quite as broad, but it seems to be getting there. There's a lot of properties. So, like, I started off with the Alien, the Universal Monsters, some of the other guys that I can see pinned around my room here because the cards are so nice. I often like to not open them, and I just pin them up on the wall. So I've got the Boondock Saints, I've got the Crow, I've got guys from Star Trek, Scarface, Masters of the Universe, Hellboy. Behind me here, you can see these are all Transformer reaction figures. So they don't transform; they're just simple little 3 3/4 inch figures. But I love them. You get an idea what the cards are like here. So very cool. Anyway, I tend to buy reaction figures of the properties that I really love. And what I like the most with reaction figures, at least what I started out liking, was things like Scarface and the Boondock Saints. These were movies that I'm a fan of, but that they don't really have a lot of representation as far as action figures go. So I started out buying those specifically for movies and things that you couldn't get another type of action figure of. And I thought it was kind of silly to buy reaction figures of Masters of the Universe and of Transformers because I already collect better, bigger, more detailed versions of those toys. But the more reaction figures I got, the more they kind of grew on me, and I really like their simple, nostalgic flair. And so then I started buying the Transformers, and this was the first line that I went completist on. I was like, I want all these Transformers. And now they're doing G.I. Joe, and I've pre-ordered all the G.I. Joes. I really love these things. So even though I've been on board with reaction since day one, I've really only kind of got really on board with it in just the last year or two. So they mostly do, licensed properties like Transformers. But they do have at least one original property. And it makes total sense why they would want to do that, because then they don't have to pay licensing fees to another company like Hasbro or something to make Transformers. So they did a line, and I assume it's probably because the Universal Monsters was one of the first sets they released, and it was probably pretty successful for them. So they know monsters sell. So they said, well, let's make a line of basically just monsters and villains. We won't have any good guys in there. And when they were trying to come up with a name for their line of villains, they settled on the worst. The premise being, you think those guys are bad? Well, these guys are the worst. So these bad guys that they created are supposed to be the worst of the worst. And so they put out the first line of 6 figures back in 2016. And I thought they were neat. There was Batula, which is this kind of bat version of Dracula. Then we see there's Black Falcon. He's a skeleton guy. Then there was a couple like kind of sci-fi, like 50s sci-fi looking characters. So Gas Phantom and X2. Then there was Robot Reaper and Snake Tut. Now these are all interesting, original ideas, but they all kind of remind you of something else. And they were popular right off the bat. In fact, these figures seemed to sell out pretty quick. And a lot of them like skyrocketed in value on the secondary market. That Super7 re-released them in new colors multiple times. I've kind of lost track. I'm not sure how many times they've re-released those initial 6 figures. But I would say they're available in at least 4 colors each. Some of them maybe more than that. But, and they still put them out now. Like, they'll still be Wave 1 figures coming out in new paint jobs. Anyway, then they put out Wave 2 in 2017. And that consisted of Captain Deadstar, who was like a skeleton pirate guy. The Cortex Commander, Frankenghost, Red Tiger, Shidusa, and Werewolf Biker. So again, they're kind of silly ideas, some of them. But again, they've got a real fan base that has grown over these things. And I thought they were cool too. In fact, Cortex Commander is this guy who's just kind of got a suit with a brain. So like a military outfit with a brain in a jar. And it's reminiscent of so many villains. Like whether you think of Krang from Ninja Turtles, who's just a brain, or in Hellboy, there was like a Nazi scientist who was just a head in a jar, or like Armin Zola, who's kind of like this Nazi scientist in Captain America, who's got like a computer screen for a head. Like any of these guys that kind of have disembodied heads, I think brains in jars are kind of a common science fiction trope. And I just love that stuff. So when Cortex Commander came out, I really was tempted to buy him. I was like, but I was trying to stay a little bit more disciplined. I was like, I collect G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, all this other stuff. But I really wanted to branch out into a property that I have no ties to. Sure, it's a cool figure, but I'm going to hold off. And sure enough, the decision was made for me because after a while it sold out and I couldn't get it. And I did kind of kick myself about it. But then they repainted them, and I thought, now's my chance to get Cortex Commander in a different color. Again, I waited on it too long, and he sold out again. And it's happened 3 times, maybe 4 times now. And every time I kind of like hummed and hawed a little bit, like maybe I should have done it. But it's only in the past year that I've really gotten into reaction figures with like these growing lines here, that I kind of told myself, the next time he goes up for sale, I really want to make sure that I get the Cortex Commander. So just the last month, Super7 put out a new wave of repaints, and I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to do it. And what it was a set of, I think it was 6 figures, or maybe it was 4. Anyway, first off, they introduced 2 brand new characters to the worst. So it was Wave 3, but rather than 6 figures, there was only 2. It was Killer Bat and King Hell. But besides those 2 new characters, then they took some of their old characters, and I can't remember if it was 4 or 6 off the top of my head, but they took some of their old characters and they re-released them in a like glow-in-the-dark plastic with the new packaging. And I thought, okay, this is the one I'm going to get. I'm getting glow-in-the-dark Cortex Commander, and they were only available at Super7's website. You couldn't go to a third party like Big Bad Toy Store or something where I normally shop. So I went ahead and ordered Cortex Commander, and here he is in all his glory. I haven't opened him yet. I'm not sure if I will. I probably will. I don't know. But, so here he is. You see he's this glow-in-the-dark. He's got this kind of almost like translucent blue plastic. And then he's got the dome with the bright pink brain in the center there. We'll get a better look at him later. But I really just wanted to show off the packaging. Sometimes when I flip the camera around and I'm showing you things in the packaging, if it's a large box, it's hard for me to like show you the whole thing. So I wanted to show you guys these things from far back so you can really take it all in. So it's really cool packaging. This would look really cool under like a black light or something with the pink border, that pink brain, like it really pops there. Really cool. I love this card art. The only problem I have with it is that it's kind of an awkward shape. Like if I were to pin it up here with these things, I've got a whole wall of these things and they're all nice squares or rectangles. They're all the same shape, so I can put them easily together. This guy here would not fit easily anywhere. So that's probably the main reason why I think I'm going to open this guy up. I'll save this card in a box somewhere, but he's not going to end up pinned to my wall, as nice as that is. But anyway, there's Cortex Commander. However, since I wasn't really interested in the other glow-in-the-dark characters, I at the very least wanted to sample one of them and see what I thought. And if I liked them, then maybe I'd go back for the others. But to order one figure from Super7 and then pay the shipping was about as much as the figure was. And so I wasn't feeling like I was getting much bang for my buck. So I wanted to see if there was anything else available on their website that I could pair with it. And I actually ended up buying a couple of other Worst figures. Now this is a brand new thing that they're doing, but they're taking existing Worst figures, they're repainting them, and they're releasing them with a beast. Now, I've already mentioned that Super7 did Masters of the Universe reaction figures. And when they were doing that, I think they've since lost the license. But at the time, when they were making Masters of the Universe figures, you could get a set where it was Battle Cat with a He-Man and Panther with a Skeletor. And so they were these beasts that were about, they were to scale with the reaction figures, not super large. But the way the characters rode them, because normally on Battle Cat, He-Man's legs kind of spread apart so he can sit on Battle Cat's back. But because these guys are modeled after Kenner Star Wars figures, their legs don't spread apart. They only go forward and backwards like this. So in order for it to sit on the cat, basically they just punched a hole in the back of Battle Cat and He-Man's legs go right inside of it. And that's how the old Star Wars figures used to work with the Tauntauns and the Dewbacks. They just had a little trap door on their back and you just stuck the figure right inside of it. It was pretty neat. So Super7 had these Battle Cat and Panther molds. It was the same mold, just painted different colors. But now they've lost the license to Masters of the Universe, but they found a way to cleverly use that mold again. And they released a set of figures called the Worstmen of the Apocalypse. So if you're familiar with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, you've got war and famine and pestilence and whatever the other one was. So they've taken an existing figure, they've taken a Battle Cat, they've painted them into a nice theme that goes together, and then they've released them one at a time. So they released the first one a couple of months ago, I think, and I didn't buy it then, even though I did think it was cool. But now they've released the second one at the same time as these glow-in-the-dark figures came out. So I bought the glow-in-the-dark guy, and I thought, well, I'll buy one of these Worstmen of the Apocalypse figures, and I thought, well, fuck it, I'll buy both of them, because they're cool. So here they are in their boxes. So first on the back here you'll see, so we've got war, pestilence, death, and famine. So those are just kind of a tease. You see the silhouette of the cat, which is the same on all 4, but you get a sense of what color scheme they're going to go with, and then you see the silhouette of the character. So you can kind of guess at which worst character they're going to put in here. So for this red one, you see this kind of pirate hat. That's Captain Deadstar, the skeleton pirate guy. So I don't know if you can see him there, but we'll get a closer look, because I'm definitely going to open these up. But you see there he's got a cat, which is just a repaint of the Masters of the Universe Battle Cat. He's got this original armor he sits on, and it's got this nice red themed box. It's got this kind of metallic, reflective logo for the Worst. The box is relatively simple otherwise, but it's pretty sharp looking. I like just the all red. The figure's red, the cat's red, the logo's red. It's really cool, and I like it quite a bit. I'm excited to open this thing. And then the other one I got is Famine. So now this one is all black. Again, you see the logo. It's kind of got a different sheen to it, so it kind of reflects the light a little bit differently. And it's got the Black Falcon. That's the skeleton kind of knight. He looks like somebody right out of maybe the Evil Dead or something. So this is the first time he's been released in these kind of all black and gray colors. He's got the same cat, same armor, but instead of red, it's in black. Back of the package is the same. So just a relatively simple box. But I think they're really cool. And will I get the other 2? I don't know. I'll probably definitely get Death, because I'm guessing from this silhouette that that's going to be Cortex Commander again. So in a new paint job, like a white paint job with a white cat. So I'll definitely want to get that one. Now the purple one from the silhouette, I'm thinking that's going to be Shadusa. And I'm not particularly fond of that character, but who knows? If I get the other 3, I might want to get the 4th one just like the full set. But Pretty cool stuff. Anyway, I've rambled on for like 15 minutes here, so why don't we pop these things open and take a closer look at them. So before we open them up, let's take one last look at Cortex Commander inside the packaging. You'll see what I mean here, that when I flip the camera around, it's really hard for me to get full shots of packaging in here because my desk just isn't big enough for me to get back far enough to really show you. But again, it's a really sharp card. The figure looks really cool in there. And on the back, you'll see the other figures. So there's 6 of them listed there, so I'm pretty sure it was the 6 figures that were released in the glow-in-the-dark format. And yeah, so there he is. Really cool. Now let's pop him open and take a look at him outside of the packaging. So here is Cortex Commander outside of the packaging. I was a little torn about whether to open this guy or not, but I couldn't help myself, so here he is. So we've already taken a look at him inside the packaging. There's not a whole lot more to see because, you know, one of the points of an action figure that you can't really experience until you open it up is the articulation. But as we've already talked about, these guys have very limited articulation. So as far as movement, his arms forward and backward, there's no, you know, he can't outstretch his arms to the side or anything. And his legs, same thing, forward. They don't even swing backwards. They're kind of blocked by this piece here. So he can kick forward. And that's essentially it. Now, these figures are known to have 5 points of articulation. The 5th point would be that his head can turn side to side. But this guy can't do that. Well, because he's got this jar on his head that protects the brain inside. So, yeah, as far as the paint detail, he's pretty limited. It's about on par with what the other versions of Cortex Commander have, except, you know, this guy's got that weird translucent blue body, so it almost makes him look a little more bland than maybe some of the other figures where they had this in either gray or brown or white. For a base outfit, this guy's got that weird soft blue. So, yeah, I like the look of this figure. I think it looks pretty cool. I don't know if I'd say it's the best look for him. I think I would have preferred... I don't know, maybe any of the other versions. There's one version that I kind of showed you an image of earlier where the glass over his brain is actually red. I don't necessarily like that because it's a little harder to tell what's going on inside of the jar. I like that with the clear glass you can really see his brain there. Not a whole lot of sculpted detail in the brain. But yeah, he's pretty cool. Now, I was a little surprised when I opened this guy up. Right away, the glass jar fell off of his head. And when it did, I didn't actually stop to check. With the jar off, perhaps I could turn the brain from side to side to make it look from side to side. So it might do that. I'm not sure. But there was a little sticker. I don't know if you can see it. But there's like a little clear... You can kind of see it here. There's a clear, almost like a piece of tape, except it's circular, that was on the back of the helmet. And my first thought was that that's just part of the packaging and you take that off. And maybe you are supposed to take it off. But otherwise, this helmet doesn't really click into place. Like when I took that sticky thing off, the helmet fell right off. And you could kind of set it in place. But if you shook them upside down, it would certainly fall off again. So I don't love that. I kind of wish that it would stay in place with like a nice solid click. Now, with that little sticker there, it seems to hold it in place okay, and it's kind of hidden. You don't really see it there unless I point it out to you. But yeah, I would take it off to show you how that works, but I'd be worried that if I remove this too many times, that's not going to get sticky, or maybe it'll get fingerprints on it and it'll be a little more visible. So I think I'm just going to leave it as is. I don't really see any reason why I would need to take the glass dome off of his brain. But yeah, he's a fun little figure. Now you see there, he did come with an accessory. So he's got a little pistol here. Looks like the kind of thing that you know, would come with a cowboy or something. It's pretty standard little gun. So that works. I don't think he would need much more than that as far as accessories go. So yeah, a neat little figure. If you want to see him for scale, I've got an old Kenner Star Wars figure here. So you can see they line up size-wise pretty much perfectly. You know, here's the articulation that I've been talking about. Legs side to side, arms, head turns. So yeah, if you wanted to integrate this guy into your playtime with any of your old 70s, 80s action figures, he fits in there pretty much perfectly. Now I don't know if I've had this guy out here under the lights long enough for him to really pick up a good glow, but maybe before we move on to the next guy, I'll turn the lights off here and see if we can get this guy glowing. And here is Cortex Commander with the lights off. So you can see that blue base color used for his uniform that glows really well, but there's no glow on his boots, on his hands, or on his head, which is too bad. I kind of wish that the brain glowed as well, but anyway, pretty cool. So here's a closer look at Captain Deadstar and his cat of war, I guess we'll say, inside of the box. Again, I just really appreciate these boxes, so I wanted you to be able to see it before I open it up. Even though it's really simple, just this swirl effect. Like, something about it looks kind of retro, kind of, I don't know, kind of reminds me of like a B movie or something. And I think that's what these guys are all about. So, really nice paint deco on the cat, but we'll see that in a second once I open them up here. But again, just really sharp box. This is why it's so hard for me to open these things up. Part of me just wants to pin this thing to the wall or put it on a shelf just as it is. But yeah, I think I'm going to open them up. I'm really kind of dying to fiddle around with this guy. So here is Captain Deadstar and his cat, which we will call War, outside of the packaging. So I really like Captain Dreadstar. He's pretty cool. Both him and Cortex Commander were the two figures that really appealed to me visually. Some of the other worst characters are kind of fun, such as, the motorcycle werewolf and all that stuff, but they're kind of goofy. I don't necessarily consider this guy goofy. Like, sure, he's a pirate skeleton, but I think he's, like, I could believe this guy is kind of menacing too. Like, if he was the real villain in a famous 80s toy line, I would totally buy into this guy as being like a Cobra Commander or a Skeletor, like a lead villain type character. Some of the other ones, I don't get that same vibe from. So I really like this guy, and I'm pleased that he lives up to my expectations. Really nice but simple sculpt on him. Like, you see the wrinkle in his uniform, all this sculpted detail here, and the nice little paint on all the little buttons and everything like that. Very cool. Now for accessories, I like his a lot more than Cortex Commander. He's got a sword that fits in his hand nice and snug with this translucent red flaming blade on the sword. So that's really neat. The head sculpt is fantastic. I love that head sculpt. Like, it's not really scary. It's not really silly. Like, the expression is very neutral. I like the gold tooth in there. That's pretty cool. The sculpted skull and crossbones is pretty nice on the helmet. Now, I did notice that I've got this paint scrape here. Like, you can actually feel that with your finger if you scrape your hand along there. I don't know if it was like that when I opened it, or if I did that to him just in the couple of minutes I was handling him before I turned on the camera here. It doesn't particularly bother me, because I'm really not sure if I did it myself, but I feel it kind of suits the character to have himself a little scuffed up. But if that is something that I did in just the last couple of minutes, that kind of worries me that the paint might be quite delicate on these guys. So be mindful of that, I guess. The only other really thing to mention with him is he's got this little vinyl cape. So it's pliable and probably a little delicate. Early Star Wars figures from Kenner had capes like this. So your Darth Vader and your Obi-Wan had these vinyl capes. Some of them had soft good capes, I believe, as well. And I'm not sure which came first. They might have had vinyl capes and they did a running change to soft good capes, or vice versa. I don't quite recall. But yeah, like, it looks neat. And I actually think it matches the figure better than a soft goods cape. But you can imagine how if you caught this on something, it could tear quite easily. So I'll have to be careful about that. His peg leg is kind of cool. The only problem with the peg leg is it does make it a little difficult to get him to stand. So you'll notice, yeah, you got to work with him a little bit. It's not too bad. But yeah, if I was to display him on a shelf somewhere, I'd feel better if I had a display stand for him. All the worst figures, they do have holes in their feet, so it should work with a standard like G.I. Joe display base. SUPER7 does actually make bases specifically for reaction figures. They have the little reaction logo on there, so you could seek some of those out if you wanted. But yeah, pretty cool little figure. Now let's take a look at the cat. Now, I will say I was a little disappointed maybe with the cat when I first opened it up, just because I thought this armor would stay on a little better. But this helmet, like, it's not attached really in any way. It just kind of rests on there. It falls off very easy. So as soon as I took this guy out, the helmet just fell right out of my hands. This thing here, it stays on a little bit better because these, they kind of look like ribs, I guess. Like this looks like a spine of maybe a larger animal that this thing uses for its base. So anyway, the ribs kind of grip him. They're kind of soft. They're probably a little delicate too. I'd be careful that if I kept taking this on and off, I could maybe snap one of these. But they just kind of give way when you pull this off, and it comes off them pretty easily. So it's a pretty simple harness. There's not much in the way of detail. I think they probably could have done a little bit more here, but whatever. Same as the helmet. I like the helmet. It doesn't require a whole lot more detail. I like the kind of Triceratops look to it. And it's kind of on theme with Battle Cat. So I know I talked about this earlier, but you can kind of see how this cat, once you take the armor off, this would be the same cat that they would have used for Battle Cat. You can imagine this guy in green with the orange stripes. So the same sculpting on the face. I like the face sculpt. I like that they took the time to color his eyes, give him pupils, color his teeth, and inside his mouth. It's a pretty nice little sculpt. For articulation, it's very simple. It's just the four legs that kind of move forward and backwards. The head doesn't move, the jaw doesn't close. The tail does move from side to side. So, you know, this guy has 5 points of articulation, just like his rider does. Now, you see, I talked about this in the intro as well, how these figures ride their cats. They've got this trap door, and you just push it down, and the figure tucks inside. And I said that was like the vintage Star Wars figures. Now, I do have a dewback here from the vintage Kenner Star Wars line, just to show you how that works. So he has the saddle here, and it kind of disguises the fact that he's got this little trap door on the back. Now, this figure is obviously many, many years old, decades old. So maybe the trap door has gotten loose over time. Like, it pops back into place quite nicely, you'll see. But when putting a figure in there, you just tuck him in and he's good to go. Now it looks like 3PO is riding the dewback. Works great. I did find that with there you go. With this guy, I tried to put him inside of the cat, and it was a bit of a struggle. This thing is very tough to kind of fight against, I found. Like, it wants to force the figure out of there. You'll see what's going on inside. There's not much. Like, there's a little wall there. It's not very deep. So it's not like there's anywhere for his legs to slide in and tuck in. He just kind of stands upright and goes in there. And if you see what I mean, when I push him in here, it's been a little easier than it was before. I found I was putting him in here and this thing kept kind of wanting to throw him out again. So that's basically what he looks like riding the cat. Not the most believable of riding stances, but... And if I put the armor on as it's intended... See, look, as I put that on, I bent one of the ribs. So that's what I mean. You got to be careful with these things. Alright, so we put that on him. The hole lines up with that. So if we put him in here... See, now he's throwing them out. Yeah, it's a bit of a struggle because the cape here, it kind of bumps into the harness, and I'm worried if I have to keep wrestling with it, I could damage the cape. So this doesn't work as well as I'd hoped. Plus the fact that the mask doesn't really stay in place very well. I'm a little disappointed with the quality of that, to be honest with you. Like, I think it's fine if I display him separately from his cat, but yeah, I don't think I want to leave him in there permanently because I don't want to risk damaging the cape. So yeah, I think when I put these guys on display, it'll be more like this. I also worry about if I keep trying to jam this guy in here, I could warp his leg or something. So anyway, that's my initial experience outside of the box. It's a little tough to get this guy onto or into his cat. And here's a closer look at Black Falcon and his cat Famine. So now you can finally get a really good look at the figure there. So he's pretty crazy looking. He's got a little sword there as an accessory. So the cat is the same as the one we saw in the other box, except this one has no paint deco on him because I guess we would classify him as a panther. Yeah, I don't know if you really see it on the previous box, but the name there, it's almost kind of hidden away. It just, you only notice it there when it kind of reflects the light. So Famine, Black Falcon. So, as I said before, these are really nice boxes. They would look great just on display as is, but I am pretty eager to open these figures up. So let's take a look at Black Falcon and Famine. So here is Black Falcon and his cat Famine outside of the box. So first up, let's take a look at the figure of Black Falcon. So he's really cool. I like the design of this guy. Like, he looks like he could fit into so many different toy lines, whether it be Dungeons and Dragons or Masters of the Universe or, you know, just any sort of fantasy genre. You know, you can't go wrong with like a skeleton dressed up in armor. It's very cool. And I like the fact that both him and Captain Deadstar are both skeletal characters. So they kind of look like they could be, you know, teammates or from the same place or whatever. Anyway, I have a little bit of a gripe about this guy right out of the box, and that's his accessory. So he's got a sword. It looks like a pretty standard little sword. SUPER7 has probably used this with other toys in the past, if I had to guess. But so he's got two hands. This one here is kind of sculpted in an open position, so he could like slap somebody across the face. This one here is the open hand. So that's the only one that you can use with the sword. And you can tell just by looking at that. Look at how thick that grip is compared to this little sword. So I don't know why they would do that. The only thing I can assume is because this sword already existed with another toy line maybe. It just does not seem like it was made for this guy because it wobbles all over the place. And that's kind of a bummer. So I really do enjoy these figures, but I'm a little disappointed. These are the first worst figures I've ever bought. And I don't love the fact that Cortex Commander's glass dome falls off unless you use a little piece of sticky tape to hold it on. I don't like that his accessory doesn't fit in his hand. And, you know, they are a little delicate. And I don't like how the figures don't fit into their steeds super easily. But I wouldn't consider this a negative review. Those are some little problems with the figures, but overall, I still think they're a lot of fun, and I think the sculpting is really great. This guy has very minimal paint, but what paint he has I think is really effective. Those deep red eyes and the red paint in the nose gives him a kind of very creepy, menacing look. The sculpt on this guy, so he's got the little falcon on his like belt buckle, I guess, hence the name Black Falcon, or that's his name, right? Black Falcon. Anyway, then he's got these knee pads with skulls on them. That's pretty cool. I like the spiky boots. The spikes all over the armor. I'm just noticing this thing on his wrist, which I don't know what that is. Is that supposed to be like a bird resting there? It almost looks like a fish or something sitting on his wrist. Anyway, interesting. He doesn't have the same thing on this one. So yeah. Cool little figure. Now let's look at his cat. So this is the exact same sculpt. And honestly, I find that a little disappointing. Like, it doesn't bother me that they're using the same cat sculpt, but they obviously created this new armor. You know, they didn't just take Battle Cat's armor and repaint it. They went through the trouble of making some new armor for these worst figures. And you know what? I wouldn't even care if they used it on just these two figures. But as you can see from the silhouette on the back of the box, they're planning on using this exact same armor all 4 times for all 4 Worstmen of the Apocalypse. And that seems pretty lazy to me. Like, I wouldn't even care if they used the same, like, harness, but I think the helmets should be different. Maybe if they modeled the harnesses after different dinosaurs or something like that. But anyway. And this cat here, it's the same cat. The helmet, again, falls off. It's staying on a little. stays on a little bit, but it doesn't clip in place anywhere. You know, you just kind of rest it on there. So you can see there, same cat, same sculpt. It's still nice that they gave him the multicolored eyes with the pupils, but they didn't go with the inside of his mouth red, which is a little odd. I don't necessarily mind, because I kind of like how stark black he is, and that might have been too much red in the mouth, so maybe that's the thought process, but still, it's a little odd that they didn't do it for him since they did it on the other guy. And, you know, otherwise the articulation's the same, all the sculpting's the same. This thing's the same, it covers up the little trap door on his back. So, this guy here, I also stuck him in before I started filming just to see how that would work. I had similar problems, maybe it's because of these spiky boots, but trying to get him in here. Okay, well he fit in there okay this time around, but I did struggle with it a little bit earlier. I still got that same feeling of resistance, like the trap door on the cat kind of wants to, and I'm getting that a little bit now. If I adjust him slightly, yeah, the thing just kind of boots him out of there. It's almost too good. It needs a little less resistance. So maybe with time that will wear out and it won't be so bad. But right now it's kind of it really fights against the figure. It doesn't want to get pushed down like that. But anyway, that's what he looks like riding the cat. If you want to see the horsemen together, or the worstmen I should say, there they are. Try and get this guy in here. So there you go. So that's pretty cool. I do like these guys. They're fun. Will I pick up both of the other guys? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about my worst men of the apocalypse. Oh, actually, there is one other thing I did want to mention. A little while ago, I bought a Masters of the Universe blind box, and the blind boxes contain some of the Masters of the Universe reaction figures just in different paint schemes. And I got this Skeletor that comes in black and gray with red eyes. And it seemed like kind of an oddity to me at the time, but he fits in perfectly with this guy here. They look like they were made to be best buds. So Skeletor might look pretty good riding this cat as well. He's got big feet, so it's a little tough to get him in there, but anyway, you get the idea. Looks alright. Okay, that's it. That's all I have to say about these guys. So that was my review of my first worst figures. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button, and that way you'll know to come back when my next video goes up. I'm actually shooting this ending before I've actually opened these things up, so I can't give you my opinion on them yet, but I think they're pretty cool inside the box, and I'm sure by the time I opened them up and looked at them, I thought they were even cooler. So chances are I'm going to get some more of these. So if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more of these, I'd say stay tuned, because there's probably more coming pretty soon. So I think that's all I have to say on this. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.